All right, hello everyone. This is Eric Rodriguez, Director of Demand Generation here at Virtual Instruments, and this is our webinar, the Virtual Instruments CIA, an infrastructure audit that always pays for itself. Our speakers today are VI customer and storage infrastructure expert Simon Close, and our Senior Director of Customer Success, Kevin LaMair. In today's session, Simon and Kevin will discuss the value of VI critical infrastructure audits, including real-world use cases. Today's webinar is being broadcast globally to Virtual Instruments customers, partners, and vendors around the world. For anyone who might not be familiar with us, Virtual Instruments is the leader in application-centric infrastructure performance management, providing comprehensive infrastructure instrumentation and performance analytics for enterprise data centers. We're known not only for our virtual wisdom and load dynamics enterprise solutions, but also for our expert professional services, which you'll learn more about today. With that, I'll pass the presentation to Kevin to begin today's webinar.
Good morning, and thank you, Eric. First, a little bit of background about me. I joined Virtual Instruments about 6 years ago. I've since had multiple roles. I actually originally joined the company as a service delivery manager and actually delivered a number of these projects initially, and then grew the team and leadership row, and since moved on to other areas. We've actually performed a little over 120 of these during my tenure here. So we've got it down pat. We've seen some amazing things done over the years, and it's a high-valued service. We work with our customers to guarantee performance, maximize availability, and optimize their costs in the process. Our process involves a set of functional teams at VI to go and do an integrated set of services and solutions. And we do that whether it's a discrete problem in your environment that you're trying to solve over time, before you've got a big migration, you've got a big platform change. If you're trying to reduce some costs, are you moving from a tiered storage platform to flash? All those sets of changes that always happen. It's been my experience in IT that about 80% of all outages are resulting in change to either the infrastructure or the applications that reside on them. The challenge is everything in today's data center is complex. Things are getting increasingly obfuscated by hybrid application infrastructure. There's so many different layers now between the application stack to the underlying infrastructure that hosts it. Things are difficult to predict. They're difficult to troubleshoot. There's so many different layers. There's so many different element managers that you have to go into to do a log analysis, to do troubleshooting. And we provide an integrated solution that gives you overlap and visibility into all of those things. One of the things that we've been noticing with our customers recently is that they've got all kinds of different cloud strategies. They may be doing a public cloud strategy, a hybrid cloud, or a private cloud on-premise. So we've been able to actually help all of our customers predict how the application will perform in the cloud, regardless of where it's going to be hosted. We've got a number of services that we offer. The one that we're focusing on today is the critical infrastructure audit. The key is that this is something that's planned. It's a large initiative. It has an element of risk because of change. If you're lifting and shifting workloads between different data centers or different platforms, and everybody is kind of feeling a little uneasy. They're trusting that the project's on plan, but maybe they just want to verify. Back when I was doing a lot of large projects, and I'd be getting shipments in for gear in the data center, and the guy in the dock says, yeah, everything's here. I'd trust that everything was there, but then sometimes I would go down and actually go through the boxes and make sure we had everything that we needed for whatever we were doing that night. So the theme there is trust but verify, and use us to verify. We also have on the left of the critical infrastructure audit is a similar service that I just kind of wanted to highlight really quickly, is if you're in the scenario of, hey, I've already done this, I chose not to use VI, but now I'm in deep trouble, we also do an emergency troubleshooting service as well. It's a lot like the delivery, but it's a lot more rapid and reactive versus proactive. And how we do this, it's high level, it's a short-term standalone expert service. It's designed to support your infrastructure optimization upgrader initiative. Like I said before, it's planned in advance. We try and scope it to your exact needs, however many links we're looking at, how many data centers we're looking at. I do also want to highlight that we do have a portable assessment kit for this in different fashions. We have these things called probe packs, and we have a full solution integrated it. So this could be for an existing Virtual Wisdom customer or someone that doesn't have Virtual Wisdom in their environment. So we can use their existing instrumentation in their instances and just do the reporting pieces of it. And if they need some swing gear, we can send them out some additional gear for a short period of time. We generally like to customize this. It's a canned solution, but we will customize the scope to the needs for the initiative and for the particular infrastructure. The big key here for me is that I see that the ease of getting this thing into your environment, because we do everything for you. We have a team of project managers, field engineers, and then our principal architects that do the final written reports with findings and recommendations. And we will prioritize those findings for you. We'll give you an executive summary in PowerPoint that shows all of the top points of, hey, this is where you need to go first. You need to go clean this stuff up first, and then that way you can make the decisions on what you want to bite off either before or after the initiative. And with that, I'm going to send it over to Simon. Very excited to have Simon here today. He's been with a longtime customer spanning 2 different companies, Lloyd's and Morrison's, over in the UK. And we've helped him a number of times over the years, and I can't wait to hear what he has to say and share about his experiences. And with that, I'll hand it over to Simon.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Hello, everyone. I'm going to speak to you today from a customer perspective. So, as Kevin mentioned, I've been a VI customer at actually 3 organizations now. So, HBOS, Lloyds Banking Group, and most recently when I was at Morrison's. So I'm going to call upon the knowledge and experiences that I've had and hopefully bring to life what infrastructure performance management and specifically critical infrastructure audits can do in conjunction with virtual instruments can do for you. So the 3 Gen in 10 title is all about the evolution really of IPM and how it's emerged, how it can be used and what the future holds. So in terms of generation 1, I called this the insight generation. So this was really where the stage before the IPM phrase was actually coined. I'm going to briefly talk about generation 2, which is all about consolidation and how VI can help customers with their IT consolidation. And then finally Gen 3, the hybrid IT generation, and how VI can be used to support hybrid IT adoption. So generation 1, the insight. So I guess like many of you in 2006 and probably before, I was accountable for a large storage and SAN environment. SANs with thousands of ports were not uncommon. However, the complexity was high and the interoperability was critical. This meant that the service delivered was opaque and tended to be non-transparent, which led to high mean time to detect and mean time to repair. So at HBOS, I instigated a program which had the intention of moving from a SAN environment that was considered as being one of the largest in Europe to one that was world-class in terms of its management. To achieve this, my team and I had a vision of what world-class was, which included things like having non-negotiable standards, defining and adopting process and procedures, maintaining currency of things like firmware and microcode, and also having planned maintenance windows. And then over the top of that was deploying monitoring and management tools and platforms like virtual instruments. Finally, what I did was I ensured that the designs and implementations were ratified by third parties such as Splice Group, Brocade, HDS, virtual instruments, and with lots of help and support from the team at GCH. So I didn't know that my team and I had been successful. So in the early days, we became fixated with things like eradicating CRC errors. Later, we became fixated with fixing class 3 discards. We did things like segregating production and pre-prod environments, so that achieved isolation and protection and route to live environments. We improved monitoring and alerting, and we ensured that we had physical diversity at the fabric level, including dark fiber routes. In terms of specific initiatives that we did, we implemented a brand new structured fiber cabling system from a company called Splice Group. We used that as an enabler really and a foundational technology, and on top of that we deployed fiber optic taps or splitters, as they may be commonly known. And the reason we did that was to allow virtual instruments hardware probes to be deployed in conjunction with software probes and also a fiber channel analyzer. And these were the critical tools that we had in our arsenal. We established a team dedicated to making the SAN fabric strategic enablers for the companies. And finally, we had adopted some practices such as cable ones, where we flood wired equipment back to central fiber distribution cabinets, which allowed any-to-any device connection. So a great deal of work went into this insight generation, and in terms of the results, we saw improved stability, reduced incidences of root cause unknown, and we improved the mean time to detect and mean time to repair. We detected a number of defects in firmware and microcode and also in hardware within the storage and SAN environment using the virtual instruments platform. Finally, we started to work with virtual instruments in terms of what best practice deployment and user stories looked like. I think during this time we submitted many requests for enhancements, which VI accepted and turned around pretty quickly for us as a customer. I'd like to think that the critical infrastructure audit was born from, or at least informed by, the work we jointly trailblazed during this period of insight in Generation 1. So moving now to Generation 2. So I moved to Morrisons in 2011 to lead a large £10 million storage transformation program. We were consolidating down from a number of storage vendors onto a single vendor. I insisted that we invest in virtual instruments in order to de-risk the migrations to a new storage platform. So there's obviously far too many risks and unknowns when you're doing such a large and complex storage migration without an insurance policy, and VI for us was that insurance policy. What I found at Morrisons was that there were no real workload baselines. Solution designs were in the main missing. There were some known and probably many unknown bottlenecks, and the environment was quite fragile. So how did we approach the de-risking? Well, firstly, we established a workload performance pre-migration baseline. So we collected millions of data points. We had the metrics and the measurement covered off. Building on from the work I'd led at HBOS and Lloyds Banking Group, we followed a number of best practices and adopted standards, and we used virtual instruments performance benchmark to test the storage platform that we were going to migrate to. So unfortunately, I think at that time, virtual instruments hadn't acquired load dynamics, so we used traditional tools like Iometer, Swing Bench, and VD Bench to do performance testing of the new storage platform. We performed a number of reverse engineering activities to work out why the replication was working in the way that it was, which was underpinned by a patent that the vendor had. And we leveraged VI services to assist with detailed performance analysis and reporting. So one of the things that I'd like to probably mention a little bit is that flash and solid state disk is not a one-size-fits-all solution. So the 3PAR that we were using at Morrisons had 3 tiers of storage in the deployment that we had, and a number of clever algorithms that it used to dynamically move data around, which can conspire against you, and especially if part of a LUN that's been demoted to the lowest tier suddenly becomes a hot LUN. So you soon find out what the constraints and compromises are. You should work with the vendor, speak to reference customers, and certainly use the VI platform and services to inform. In my view, transparency is the key to success. You need to lift the lid on the services that you provide. So I was keen to devolve access to the VI platform to non-storage people. I wanted to provide SLA reports on health, utilization, and performance, and invite service owners within Morrisons to one-to-one sessions with a VI application engineer to explain the performance of their critical application that they were responsible for. So what could the outcome be? Well, you'll have optimized solutions, you'll have changed or be changing from delivering a reactive to a proactive service, and those services will have become strategic enablers for your organization. You may also have embedded services provided by virtual instruments in your own teams, which is what we did at Morrisons. So moving on to the third generation of hybrid IT. So the first point is leverage. So use what you know. Use your key learnings from the last 10 years. Remember that no one understands your systems better than you. Use VI to provide workload profiles and use standard reporting and exports to assist with workload categorization and ultimately workload placement. It's key to make informed decisions, so use VI reporting to look at critical aspects such as latency sensitivity. Because we all know, I think round-trip latency on a 100-kilometer route is about 1 millisecond, which is quite sensitive, or can be quite sensitive for some applications. So it's keen to look into that. Look closely at many known or any known trends or growth predictions, and consider batch cycles and periodic peaks, e.g. peak trading periods or year-end processing. Be pragmatic about your cloud adoption. So there's enough experience and knowledge and best practice out there now, so seek some professional guidance. Watch out for the loss of metrics and insight. Not all metrics are created equally. You may lose some metrics and insight as you move to a cloud solution, so be wary of that. But finally, look to integrate virtual instruments and virtual wisdom with other systems and tools. So certainly at Morrisons, we integrated with other SaaS products like PagerDuty and Slack, and leverage automation, infrastructure as code, and also integrate with your ITSM tool sets. So that's, in a nutshell, the 3 generations in 10 years of IPM. I'm probably going to hand back now to Kevin for any follow-on discussion or questions.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about when you left Lloyds and went over to Morrisons, being able to go in and essentially sell our platform to them as well. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that kind of evolved and kind of the discussions you had with your management team there?
Having worked with the Virtual Instruments platform for a number of years, as I mentioned, at HBOS and Lloyds, I knew what its capability was. Moving to Morrison's to lead this large £10 million storage transformation, it was key that we had the tool set in there from day one. Firstly, so that we could baseline the applications in terms of their current performance, and then so that we could de-risk the actual migration. So we wanted to test the target storage platform, understand what it was capable of doing, and then create some new benchmark reports or baseline reports when the applications moved. I think we moved around 600 applications all in all from a number of storage providers, HP,
Wow.
IBM, Modular, EMC, all onto HP 3PAR. And I've probably talked before that it was a bit of a leap of faith as moving to HP's 3PAR. I think we were the first customer in Europe to receive the model of 3PAR that we got. So it really was a leap of faith, and we really did need to try and de-risk that migration. So knowing the product and knowing the platform well enough, I knew that we could use Virtual Instruments to de-risk that whole migration approach and leverage it going forward on the 3PAR platform and everything else that followed on from that, including the adoption of all flash arrays.
Wow, that's great. Given your history with this has been so long, you've actually seen all three generations of our product going from Virtualism 3 to 4 to 5. I don't know if you have any comments about it. I'll kind of frame it up personally. When I was looking at our original product, it was built by engineers, for engineers. There was a lot of numbers and a lot of metrics and what we used to call widgets, which are squares on a dashboard, and all of these different reports, and it was literally just eye charts. And with our new platform, graphs are much easier to see and use, platform's quicker to deploy, discovers things automatically. Any kind of other additional comments that you have regarding the new VW5 platform?
We used version 3 back in its NetWisdom days, actually, and it really was an engineering tool. I was lucky that I was working with some extremely capable storage engineers that understood fiber channel. That in itself was a problem in that people had to understand fiber channel to really get the best from the product. So it was really an engineering tool, and I had a number of people that went on fiber channel training courses to understand fiber channel, so everybody knew what an exchange was and all about sequences and things like that. Ultimately, certainly with the latest version, it's completely abstracted away from. So I think version 4 introduced a new user interface, which was a change from a customer point of view and an existing customer point of view. I think we lost some features, which is a bit frustrating. I think to start with, I think those features have now been returned, but it was a bit, I think, frustrating to start with the loss of those features. However, I think the user interface was streets ahead of anything else. It was a huge improvement on the version 3 interface. It was much more modern and slick. And it did start to abstract away from fiber channel, so you didn't necessarily need to know fiber channel to make use of the platform. I think that's even more true with version 5. So yet again, there's another iteration now that again lends itself to what I want to do in terms of devolving access to the platform to other users, to non-storage users, to even to potentially non-IT users that can consume a dashboard and can look at the reports and understand what it's telling them. We've moved away from it being an engineering tool to something that can be now devolved to potentially non-IT literate users if needs be, but certainly IT literate users can understand what the user interface is telling them. It's not as complex as it was. There's a lot more intelligence now built into it in terms of the algorithms and things that used to take humans to work through is now done through the algorithms in the system. So it's much more user-friendly. It's much more easy to devolve to different user groups. The reporting is quite far-reaching in terms of its capability.
Thank you. Yes, you mentioned that you had taken the data into the non-storage people and give them visibility into how their applications were performing on the infrastructure that you were hosting and you were providing for them. That's something that we always strive to do. The new features in Virtualism 5 has made that easier for us. I find it impressive that you were able to do it on the 3 platform. I imagine there was a lot of discussions around what the metrics and what they're looking at. One of the things that we do now is we'll do application entity grouping, and then we'll show the histogram charts and the heat maps, and it'll show every single exchange for that particular application and what percentage bucket that it falls in down to the millisecond. And then it's pretty impressive, and we've been able to make those conversations a lot easier now. But did you learn over time after each application group you went out and talked to share your data, or did you simplify the metrics? How did that kind of go for you?
It's key not to overwhelm people with too much information. We shared version 3 metrics and reports with people that, as I mentioned, nobody understood what an exchange completion time was. So we had to kind of decode it and explain to them that it was really the response time of an I/O, whether it was a read or a write. That decoding's gone away now. You don't really need to decode any of the metrics or the graphs or the information being presented anymore, because I think it's quite easy to digest in terms of what it's telling you with the current version. But certainly, the way that we configured some of the reports at Morrison's was that we had application-specific reports. So a number of our mission-critical systems were reported on a monthly basis. And we did an overlay, so we did the previous months with the current months in terms of some key metrics, whether it was number of IOs, the throughput, or the response times. And we overlaid those on a month-by-month basis so that they could see at a glance how it compared to last month. So we could track things like application releases. So if we'd done an application release, had it had any impact on the workloads? Did the graphs change? If it was month end or year end, how did that compare to the previous month or the previous year, in fact, that we could report on? If there'd been a change perhaps to the amount of data that was being reported on. So if we're reporting on payroll, for example, if it was the 4-weekly payroll run, then we could see how that compared. So it's much easier with some of the utilities and some of the kind of at your fingertips reports to do the overlays and to do the comparison. I think the overlay feature was something that we fed in, going back to the version 3 to version 4. I think ourselves, along with a number of other customers, were working with VI in terms of features and what customers wanted to see. And certainly that was a key feature that I wanted to see, was this overlay of how you could compare one day to the previous day, a 24-hour offset, or even a 7-day offset or a 30-day offset. And that's now easy to do, and it comes as a standard feature, which is really powerful to do that. So you can compare previous reporting periods, and you can see the effect of application changes or indeed workload changes or infrastructure changes. If you change something in your environment, you can monitor the effect that's had positively or negatively, really.
Yeah, I love the time comparison feature because before you'd have to run a report for a period of time, export that, and then you have to run another report for the other period of time. Now it's all within the same graph. You can actually do a time comparison for the same application entity on the same graph in different colors. So, and the balance finder is also another one that's very quick. We used to have to export the data, run it through an engine, and then re-import it, and now it runs within seconds. So, great. Thank you for that. Okay, Eric, if you want to pass it over to me, I think what I want to step into next is a little bit of the tactics, how we actually deliver the service from a process perspective. I mentioned earlier the pack. So on the left you see this is a shock-proof, hardened military-grade case that we use for our logisticians to ship out to your site. It includes the appliance itself, and usually we'll stack another probe in there, and then if we need additional links, we'll do the probe packs as I alluded to earlier. And then you see in the diagram, you see the virtual server probe, which is the software side of things, the network switch probe, which communicates to your fiber channel switch. Virtual server probe talks to Power VM, ESX, and hypervisor through an API on a 5-minute interval. The network switch probe can go down to 1-minute intervals for Cisco and 5 for Brocade. And then obviously the storage probes are the ones that require the taps to be in place, and this is where we get all of the performance data. This is where all of these stacked on top of each other give you the complete picture. Once we actually engage with the customer, kind of like the flow is, if you've got a project that you've got coming up, contact your partner or your VI sales rep and start the discussions on timing, on scope, and we can put a proposal together for you. So let's just assume that's already happened. If you don't have taps in place, we'll purchase the right taps based on your infrastructure needs. We'll engage a project manager and complete a checklist to prepare so when the gear arrives that we're maximizing our time and your time. We'll coordinate schedules and work with the people at the data center and the docks and make sure that everything runs seamlessly. While that's kind of been working in parallel, if need be, we'll work with your data center staff to tell them how to install the taps properly and cleanly. So when we do get there, we're getting clean metrics into the probes. And then we ship, obviously we ship the stuff in parallel. So these aren't necessarily serial things. We like to work in parallel to maximize time. But once the gear is on site, we'll actually configure it, get things connected physically to the portable assessment kit, and then we start the configuration and discovery process, and we'll start to collect data. Usually we'll start to see data collecting within anywhere between 2 and 4 hours of arriving on site, which is great. Depending on the environment, how large it is, it may take a little bit longer to start the collection process. But then at that point in time, we're now collecting all of those metrics into our database. Sometimes, depending on the customer's time schedule and kind of what we see, we'll maybe take a peek and just kind of look at to make sure everything is in there as expected, that we've configured the product the way that you want to see it from an application entity perspective. When I say application entity, if you've got a set of hosts or storage ports that are hosting an application, so we will create those entities according to your requirements, so then when we get the downstream reporting, getting what you see, and you're not having to see every little element in the infrastructure. So after the collection period, we'll take a snapshot of the database, and we will send it off to our corporate cloud. We will go through it with a principal architect. He will dive into it. He will do all of his analysis, and he will prepare a report and findings. And then we will conduct a webinar for those findings, and we'll go through those easily digestible form. We tend to do it in PowerPoint because it flows well, but sometimes there will be some items, like if there's a large amount of hosts that are showing CRC errors, or maybe there are the balance finders found a lot of stuff out of balance. We'll also give you Excel spreadsheets and see another files that you can consume to then go and make the changes and the remediations in your environment that may be required, and the ones that we give the prioritized list for you. I touched on it a little bit earlier. We kind of hit 3 main areas in the product. Health is the big one when we talk about loss of sync, loss of signal, CRC errors, physical errors in the environment, aborts. We will actually have a separate section for health, utilization and performance during the report itself. So the key there is if you don't have good health in your environment, the performance is obviously going to be bad. We generally like to show people if they are healthy, then we dive more into utilization. And then we go into an example of the most typical performance problems that we see in the environment. I've been involved in a lot of these, and so we generally see a lot of buffer credit exhaustion. It could be on a particular set of hosts, maybe it's ISL. You may be experiencing problems on certain hosts that are going out to other areas of the fabrics that have nothing to do with the actual problem themselves. And we're all about de-risking this and addressing those performance issues. We can do it on both the EXX level for your virtualized environment, and then we can do it down on the actual storage arrays themselves. From a utilization perspective, we can tell you what your top talkers are in your environment, and then you can figure out and match your purchasing deployment decisions to your application workload and I/O profiles. Being able to monitor and optimize your new infrastructure and application workload performance is very key, and that's, I would say, one of the largest ROIs for this service. And going back to the title, this is a CIA that always pays for itself. With that, I'll give it back to Eric, and we can open the webinar up for maybe questions for the audience.
All right, very good. Thank you for that, Kevin. At this point, we do have a few but high-quality questions from the field, and this is from the field directed to Simon. Questions about the competitive set out there. So in going through all of your processes, what other solutions did you evaluate? How did they perhaps stack up to virtual instruments? And can you share any key points on why you may have selected BI over those competitive offerings?
We look to leverage all the vendor products. So we're using Bricade's Fabric Manager, we're using some of the storage vendor tools on the storage array side, but we didn't have a tool that was truly vendor agnostic in the performance space. So that's why we look to deploy and the Virtual Wisdom platform to allow us to give that kind of holistic view in a vendor agnostic manner. So I think at the time, Virtual Wisdom was the only product that did. There wasn't anything else on the market that did that. So we had a gap, we could leverage all the vendor products, but it was all kind of individuals. So the Bricade product reported on the SAN environment, the storage array product reported on the storage array. We didn't have anything that was necessarily reporting on the fiber side of things on how well the fiber was working and whether there were any low-level errors occurring there. That's why we looked at Virtual Wisdom really to plug that gap and give us that end-to-end view. Rolling forward a few years, I didn't see anything again on the marketplace that did anything anywhere near equivalent to what VI did in terms of the granular capture of data in real time at wire speed. So again, leveraging the fiber optic splitters that we deployed, it was kind of a partnership that we looked at. I'm still not aware of anything today that's truly equivalent, and certainly, you know, in that vendor agnostic way. So I think it's key to have something that is truly vendor agnostic. And as I mentioned, we switched from EMC and some HP Modular and HP Enterprise onto HP 3-part. And we did some SAN consolidation work around the Brocade side of things. And Virtual Instruments was probably the only thing that didn't need to change. It could remain the same and remain the constant, even though the storage array was changing to a flash array from a 3-tier array, and even if the speed of the SAN was changing from 8 gig to 16 gig, which is something that was done recently as well. Again, VI helped us in that environment, so I'm not aware that there is anything that's equivalent. And I guess having used the product for a platform for a number of years, I'm confident that it can do everything that any customer would need it to do, really, in that vendor agnostic manner.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that comprehensive overview. Similarly for Kevin, a few points here. How long does a CIA take to implement? If someone is interested in a CIA, what is the best way to engage with VI, and how can they get one?
So CI generally takes 5 calendar weeks to complete between the planning and the final delivery. That's not a level of effort, it's just calendar time. We, depending on the scope of the project, we can always customize the solution and make it longer or a little bit shorter. The fastest we've ever been able to do it with an existing customer where they've already been instrumented, so you take the pack out of play and the taps out of play and the training, the quickest time frame that we can do it in is about 2 weeks of collection and about a week of analysis. The very minimum is about 3 to 4. Generally, the average is about 5 weeks. If you're interested in getting a CIA and getting detailed pricing, I would reach out to your value-added partner and or your VI sales rep, and we can scope it and size it accordingly to your needs, and then come back with a proposal and a statement of work and some timing and get things going. Usually, depending on how solid the opportunity is for us, we'll even start planning. So the reps will communicate with our services team and make sure that we've got pack availability and all that kind of stuff. So usually we're on top of it. So even if it's kind of a last-minute thing that's coming up in a couple of weeks and you're not, yeah, I would really like to do this, so we definitely could react quickly.
All right, very good. And actually, that's a good segue here, Kevin, because I did mention at the onset that we do have VI partners here attending the webinar, and the question is related to the partner community. Speaking of reaching out to your value-added reseller, how can partners take the Virtual Instrument CIA out to customers?
Yeah, we've actually had a number of efforts to enable our partners and train them and shadow them on how to actually deliver it. We've got a number of folks that we've partnered with they've purchased a pack, and we're in the process of enabling them to actually go out and execute it. But from a partner perspective, I would suggest if you have never pitched it to a customer, to engage your sales rep and the solutions consultant, and then we'll probably bring somebody in from services and answer all your questions. We've got a lot of collateral on the description of service, and we can show you the statement of work templates that we have for the CAN solution. But yeah, definitely engage the sales reps and the solutions consultant in your patch for where the customer would reside, and then we can engage and do detailed education if you've never delivered the product or don't know how to pitch it to your customers, and we'll be happy to go actually with you and pitch it with you. And that's what we're all about. We're trying to support our community as well as our existing and future customers.
Okay, very good. And that seems to be all of the questions that I'm seeing from out in the field. So we will go ahead and conclude today's webinar on that note. I would like to thank both Simon Close and Kevin LaMair for providing your expertise and leadership on today's session. And of course, I would like to thank everyone out there for attending today's webinar. Please do keep an eye out for our next webinar, Guaranteeing NAS Performance. That's coming up on Friday, March the 31st. With that, we'll conclude the webinar. So thanks, everyone, and have a great day.